Hi guys, thanks for joining me today for Eileen Chevalier's Typewriter Alphabet Flashcards. Today we are going to study the Eudicotyledoneae Clade in this lesson. The Eudicotyledoneae Clade is the largest group of Angiospermae by far. There are 38 orders, 307 families, 182,227 plus species. In this lesson, we're going to look at roots, their stems, their leaves, and their flowers to find their distinguishing characteristics. So for this lesson, the materials that you're going to want to have are, of course, your typewriter alphabet flashcards, as well as the DK Ultimate Visual Dictionary, Smithsonian Flora. These books are very heavy, but wonderful. And the natural history from Smithsonian DK as well. So, pull out your journals and we're going to define things like we always do at the beginning. First up, we have dicotyledon. It's an archaic classification for a group of plants that produce seeds with two cotyledons, or seed leaves. A Eudicotyledoneae is a clade branch of flowering plants that produce seeds with only two cotyledons, seed leaves. Okay, so those definitions seemed really similar, right? So we have a dicotyledon, it has two seed leaves. A Eudicotyledon, it also has two seed leaves. So what is the difference between these two things? And the first thing we might want to go back to is, what does that EU at the beginning? Remember when we did prokaryotes and eukaryotes? So pro means before, so before it has a true nucleus, and then the eukaryote is the true nucleus. So like those organisms have a true nucleus within the cell. Same thing here. U means true. So a true dicot. So all the things that people think of in a dicot in general, like those are sometimes applied to other things other than the eudicots. But what they did was they just divided it out. So magnoliidae were part of the dicots, but they got separated out. So it's a little confusing, and then magnoliidae include other things without two seed leaves. There's some overlap. We'll learn about that in the magnoliidae lesson, but they separated it so that there were just that these things all belong together, and it's a clade, if you remember, because it's a branch, so all of those things are related. So they kind of took out all the things that weren't related to the eudicots and made them their own clade. All right, so might have already answered our first question. Question and investigate. Consider the difference between dicots and eudicots. Check. Read your end card. What does the prefix "u" mean? Why is it important to distinguish between dicots and eudicots? All right, so let's get out our cards and find our N. The N is a nasturtium, which are delicious. Hopefully you've eaten some of those. If not, you should grow them this year. And they're so spicy and delicious. U means true. We already learned this. I'm going to read you the bonus fun fact because that'll play in later on. Eudicots produce flower parts in multiples of 4 and 5. So if you remember with monocots, they produced flower parts in 3s. And so eudicots are going to have 4s and 5s. Next question. A roseate is a flower shape. Corolla. And the corolla, we'll get to this definition a little bit later, but for now I'll just tell you the corolla is all the petals. So that has 5 petals. They usually overlap. Look at the petals of 3 common berries: strawberry, blackberry, and blueberry. Which orders do these plants belong to? What is the corolla clue? And is the number 5 important? All right, so in our berries, that roseate shape. So if you think of a rose, a lot of times these days you think of a rose and you're like, ah, it's got like 5 million flowers on it. But if you look at the old roses, you will see that that is actually not the case. They are much more simple and have the 5 overlapping petals. All right, so here, this might be a good giveaway. This section is called the rosales. And we find in this section a Japanese rose called Rosa rugosa, and it has those 5 overlapping petals. We also find the strawberry with the 5 petals. So if you look at each one of these petals, they all have that same shape, and they have the same shape, same petal shape, and then they're all here in the rosales. Same family. Although there are some and other ones that look similar, but for those, they're all together. I mean, of course, they're going to look similar in that they have 5 petals. So let's look at this guy right here, one of my favorite. Again, they're kind of all my favorite. I just don't want to break it when I pull it down here. Okay, so this is an oxalis. And when you first look at it, you might go, oh, it has 3 leaves there at the end of that stem. So maybe it's a monocot, because monocots really love the number 3, but gotta look at the flowers. So here are some flowers, and as you can see, they have those 5 petals coming out. So what likes the number 5? Eudicots. Also likes the number 4. Look at all these. I just want to show you. This is so fun. There's a whole nother little branch of flowers coming up. Is the number 5 important? Is the number 3 important to these plants? And do the leaves look? It's interesting because a lot of times I will find the number 3 in eudicots, but it's not within the flower itself. So within the flower itself, if it's 3, then it's a monocot. So if you look at the iris dissection video and we cut into the seed pod, it divides into 3. But if you were to do that with a eudicot, then you would find 5 probably, so or a multiple like 4. You would find a multiple of 4 or 5 rather than that multiple of 3. So like a banana, when you open it up, how many sections can, you know, like if you like squeeze it a little bit, it kind of divides into those sections. How many is it? It's 3. And it's a monocot, so that totally makes sense, right? Whereas if you look at a pepper, and you know the lobes on the outside of a pepper, like a bell pepper, then it's going to be 4, right? So eudicot, and that's the flower or the fruit. The fruit, it comes from the flower of that plant. So the number 5 is really important, as well as 4 for eudicots. All right, in your journal, you guys are going to do a very similar activity that you did with the monocots. Examine, copy, and label the micrograph of the dicot stem in Flora. So we saw that last time. It's right here. So the eudicot is here at the bottom. And it is labeled as eudicot. The ranunculus, the one at the top, is going to be your eudicot root. So that's the one that you would use to compare. And again, there are the stems in here, but really the stems in Flora are phenomenal. So try to use those. So compare these, and how do they relate to the monocot stem and root micrographs? So just kind of now that you've done both of them, look at those and see what the differences are in them. Secondly, you're going to gather many different types of eudicot leaves to study and compare. So in the leaves, you're going to look at the same things. You're going to look at the venation in the leaves, how the veins branch. So remember and when we looked at the orchid leaf and it had those nice long leaves with the veins that went down them. So now if you look, just take a peek at this guy again. At these, you can see that they are branching really differently. So there's the central vein here, and then they branch off to either side from that. as opposed to going parallel like the other ones did. So you have a central one that they are coming off of. And then it gets even more complicated, like if you have an oak tree or something like that, and then you have all the secondary branching that's happening. So try to get a bunch of different kinds of leaves. And then the shape, again, what does the silhouette look like? So trace the outer edges to see the shape. This one's a really cool one because they're the triangles. So lay your leaves down and do the shape around the outside. And then the margin, what does the edge feel like? So for these are really smooth, but there are lots of variations of margins. So try to get a good variety of those. The Flora book is amazing for giving you examples of different types. So if you're not really sure even what you're supposed to be looking at when you go to do this, then you can look in here. These are a bunch of different kind of margins, leaf margins, and they show you, so they give you an example, and then there's this really cool little drawing to show you more simplified, so you're not getting distracted by the color and the veins and all that. You're just looking at the little edge, and the edge is the margin. Here we are. I just went over it. So here we also have the leaf shapes. So they'll give you, again, they do the same thing. So they show you an actual one, and then they show you just in a really simple line drawing what the overall shape of the leaf is. So if you aren't really sure, or you're like not even sure what you're going to be looking for, this is a great reference page for you. All right. And that's it. Those are the two. They're really similar, and I think it's really fun to compare. And again, leave yourself a little extra room, because hopefully as you go along and as you explore new places, you'll find new plants, and you can record those and record the different shapes in there. We're going to study more on leaves specifically later on. So if you run out of space, don't worry, because there's going to be a whole lesson on leaves and how that works as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's lesson, and I look forward to the next one with Magnoliidae, which is going to be really interesting to kind of compare that with the Eudicots. So we will see you then. Bye.